Hi everyone, welcome, quite a crowd. I'm Erisa Karafili. I am a Marie Curie Fellow at the Department of Computing, Imperial College London. And welcome to my presentation. I'm going to present you two solutions during this presentation for helping forensic analysts as well as cybersecurity experts to investigate cyber attacks. These two solutions are part of my Marie Curie Fellowship that is funded by the European Union. And my main focus is to create tools based on formal methods that would help the forensic analysts as well as cybersecurity experts to analyze cyber attacks. But why it is important to understand and to analyze cyber attacks? Well, currently we are living in an interconnected world. By 2020, we expect around 20 billion of IoT devices that are going to be interconnected. This increase of connectivity is going to increase the new cybersecurity challenges that we are facing now and that we will face in the future. Given the interconnectivity that we are currently living in, this means that future cyber attacks are going to have a devastating effect. We expect that by 2021 that we will spend around $6 trillion of dollars annually on cybercrime damages. So we can see that with the increase of connectivity, we are going to have unprecedented security challenges, and this brings the need of having more efficient countermeasures. Now, after we have seen that a lot of our preventive and mitigative countermeasures, they do not work because the attackers are always able to go through them. So why not start analyzing the modus operandi of the attackers by investigating the evidence left after a cyber attack in order to have more efficient countermeasures and to have attacker-oriented countermeasures? Now, this is the work of the forensic analyst as well as the cybersecurity expert. They try, given after the attack had occurred, they try to collect the evidence, analyze them, understand which were the vulnerability that those attackers have exploited, and how we could prevent this to happen in the future. What else they do is that they also try to understand who performed the attack. So who did it? Understanding who performed the attack permits to either bring this person or group of people into justice, or if we are dealing with state attacks, it permits to put political sanctions against these countries. But the main problem is that the forensic investigator needs to collect an enormous amount of evidence. These evidence are incomplete or in conflict between each other. They are incomplete also because the attacker tried to hide their traces by using anti-forensic tools, or they try to put evidence that could lead the forensic investigator to false paths, so to go into a wrong investigation path. And for sure, the amount of evidence that are collected, even if it's difficult to find the crucial evidence, there is an enormous amount of data that the analyst needs to analyze. So to help with this problem, I propose two solutions based on formal methods techniques. The first one is a rewriting procedure that permits to, given a set of evidence, to filter them by putting in the center of the filtering process the analyst. So it's the analyst itself that decides which sources he trusts more and which reasoning he trusts more. This solution permits, given a set of evidence that might be in conflict between each other, to have at the end a consistent set of evidence that are filtered. And the second solution, these are two different tools. The second solution is a reasoner that, given a set of evidence, helps the analyst to attribute the attack, to analyze and attribute the attack. So I'll start first with the filtering of cyber forensic evidence. So the solution is a logic that is called evidence logic. The evidence logic permits to represent the evidence left after a cyber attack, and together with its rewriting procedure, it rewrites those evidence, and by rewriting those evidence, it removes the various conflicts. Now, the evidence logic is based on a linear temporal logic, and the rewriting procedure permits to remove the conflict. In this logic, we state that an event is unique. So an event, if somebody is saying that this event occurred, it means that it can occur just in that instance of time. If two sources are stating that an event is occurring in two different instances of time, then we have a temporal conflict. So we want everybody to agree. At least the analyst wants everybody to agree on particular evidence. And then we also have the factual discordance. The factual discordance is, for example, when an agent says that event A, today is sunny, occurred at this date, 17th of September, and another agent is saying that actually on the 12th of September it's not sunny. This is a factual conflict. So the evidence logic permits to represent the evidence that are events that occur in instance of time and the sources of evidence. Now, because we might have different sources of evidence, the analyst himself, he can have different relations of trust. He can trust more Alice than Bob for a particular evidence, or he might trust more a source, for example, a tool, Wireshark, for the logs, rather than another tool. So these relations of trust are crucial for our filtering process. And the reasoning. So the evidence logic is able to represent the reasoning. The evidence, there might be that today is a sunny day, or agent A is saying that today is a sunny day, or there might be evidence that can be derived from other evidence. So when you derived other evidence when you derived evidence based on other evidence, you need to represent how you arrive to this conclusion. So this is what we call reasonings, and even for the reasonings, the analyst himself have relations of trust. Now, the evidence logic is divided into 3 layers. So the evidence layer, interpretation, and the reasoning one. And the rewriting procedure permits to go from the first to the second, and then from the second to the third, and from the third to the second again. This transformation, I'm going to show you with a bit more into detail with an example, permits to remove the conflicts that might exist between evidence. Now, the example that I would like to introduce is the data breach that occurred in 2016 of the Democratic National Committee. We know about that because in November 2016, WikiLeaks published some private emails, and the analyst, he wants to analyze this incident, he wants to understand what happened. So now the analyst, what he said is that, okay, I found these 3 sources that are making assertions about this incident. The first source is CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is a company that was hired by the Democratic National Committee to deal with the security problems of their server. What CrowdStrike is saying is that the attack, this data leak, occurred between March and April 2016 because he was able to make this statement based on the fact that he found evidence of a spear phishing campaign in that period, and he found evidence that this spear phishing campaign was successful. Another source of evidence is the forensicator, the second one. He is an anonymous analyst that he was writing on his security blog. He was stating that actually the attack did not occur in March, April 2016, but on the 5th of July 2016. And he was able to make this statement derived by analyzing the metadata, and he stated that this attack occurred on the 5th of July 2016 because the metadata were created on the 5th of July and there was a physical access. He was able to say that there was a physical access, so it's not a phishing campaign, but somebody went there with a USB to get all the emails. He was able to make this statement because he said that the data were transferred on the speed of 23 megabytes per second, and it is not possible to have a non-physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second. Our analyst, he went on to search for other sources, and another source is FireEye, that is a security company, and FireEye actually stated that it is possible to have a speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second, even if we don't have a non-physical transfer speed of 23 megabytes per second. So he was actually denying what the forensicator was stating. So how our evidence logic is able to represent all this? Well, let's start with what FireEye was saying. FireEye was saying that at the instance of time T2, it is the event non-physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second is true. So this is a simple evidence where we have the source, the instance of time, and the event when this occurred. So this is a simple evidence. Let's see the derived evidence. For the derived evidence, let's see what CrowdStrike was saying. CrowdStrike was saying that, so CrowdStrike is the source, is stating that the instance of time T1, the event attack occurred based on some other evidence. This evidence can be simple or derived. The evidence here is that there was a spear phishing campaign at the instance of time T1, and this spear phishing campaign was successful. Now, putting together those evidence for deriving another evidence, we call it a reasoning. So these are the derivation rules that we might use. So this is called a derived evidence. So from other evidence, and the source is making a statement that he has derived new information. So if you go on with the other pieces of evidence, we have what the forensicator was stating, that at the instance of time T2, that is different from T1, the attack occurred based on the fact that the metadata were created at the instance of time T2, and there was a physical access. He was able to state that there was a physical access because he himself, the forensicator, said that this event is not true at this instant of time. So it is not possible to have no physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second. As I stated before, we are putting the analyst on the center of all of this. So the analyst can have relations of trust for the sources. In this case, the analyst trusts more what FireEye, that is a security company, is stating with respect to the non-physical speed transfer than the forensicator. So FireEye is more trusted than the forensicator for a particular event. So we wanted to be sure that we are dealing with these trust relations for particular statements that somebody is making, because you might trust Alice more than Bob for today is sunny, but you might trust Bob more than Alice for giving you the humidity, for example, of the room. So this is what we call the relational formula. So all the evidence are represented into the evidence layer, and we go from the evidence layer to the other by using the rewriting procedure. Now, I'm going a bit briefly to show you what the formulas in the second layer look like. So in the second layer, that is interpretation of the analyst. Now the analyst, when he arrives at the interpretation layer, he doesn't care about who say what, because he had already removed all the conflicts. So this is how the formulas look like. So that is the first, on top is the formula of the first layer, and its transformation is this one, where we simply remove the source. And when we deal with the derived evidence, the transformation looks like this. This is a simple implication formula. So if you have these preconditions, then you are able to derive this one. And again, you go from the first to the second layer. Now, the third layer, that is the reasoning layer, the formulas would look like this. So on top, you can see the formula of the first layer, and on the bottom, its result. So that is what we were able to derive. For arriving, so this is the evidence reasoning formula. For arriving there, we don't go immediately. We go first through the second layer and then to the third. I'm going to explain you in detail now. It was just for giving you an overview. I know sometimes it gets confusing. So this is just to represent the syntax and what is going on. So we go from the first to the second and then to the third. The rewriting procedure that is composed of Tableau rules is the one that gets the evidence and rewrites them in the various layers. It permits to derive new evidence. It permits to solve the conflicts. And at the end, given a set of evidence that they might be in conflict, it gives you a consistent set of evidence. So this is how the algorithm looks like. The main idea is that you start with the first layer, and you try going from the first to the second to solve all the conflict between simple evidence. The conflict between simple evidence are solved by using the relations of trust that analysts have with respect to the sources. So if somebody is making some atomic evidence, making some simple statements, you can simply remove the conflicting one by using the relations of trust. And then you go from the second to the third layer by deriving all the derived evidence that you are able to derive, but using the preconditions that you have. Then you go from the third to the second again back. In this case, by removing, because when you derive some evidence, you might have that also the evidence that you are deriving might be in conflict. So again, going from the third to the second, you removed the conflicts of the derived evidence by using the relations of trust on the reasonings. So if we go back to our example, this is how the formulas look like on our data breach example. The first rule that we apply is a transformation rule that gets the derived evidence and it transforms them into the second layer formulas. So this is a tabular rule. In the tabular rules, this is an introduction rule. So it gets the formula of the first layer and it transforms it into a second layer formula and also first layer formulas. So once we have done all this transformation, this is how the two layers are populated, where we have new formulas on the first layer and also on the second layer. Now, it's time for us to find out if we have conflicts. We have a conflict in this case about what Farai was saying and the forensicator was saying with respect to having a non-physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second. This one is saying you can have it, the other is saying it's not possible to have it, and we also have the relation of trust. So what we do in this case is that we simply remove the evidence of the less trusted source. So we remove what the forensicator was saying. So this is the result in this case where we have removed what the forensicator was saying. We go on by transforming all the first layer formula here into the second one. So we are simply removing all the sources. And this is the result of the formulas. Now, we can finally derive some new evidence. That is also one of the main goals. The evidence that we can derive, so we can derive this evidence, that the attack occurred in the instance of time t1, because these are the preconditions, and we have both of the preconditions. So this is the result that we're going to have, that we're going to introduce that the attack occurred at the instance of time t1 based on reasoning R1. So now the third layer is populated. This third layer, because in this case, this is the only formula that we have. We don't have any conflict. It's just one. We don't have any problem. And this is again transformed into the second layer formula. So we go back. This is a new one. So the result that is given to the analyst are those formulas, are the simple formula. And the analyst can now say that, okay, this is what I learned. I learned that the instance of time t2, we might have a non-physical speed transfer of 23 megabytes per second. The metadata were created at the instance of time t2. This is all we know. We know that there was a spare phishing campaign that was successful and that the attack occurred at the instance of time t1. Now, all this transformation that I just showed you, we have a tool that does that. So this is just the mechanical way for showing you how this is working. We are also working on an extension of this representation and the formalism to make it more, and to enrich it and to make it more representative. And we are also running some experiments on some realistic use cases to show that actually our tool is working. So let me go to the second part of my talk, attribution of cyber attacks. As I said before, attribution is important for discovering who performed the attack, for bringing the culprit into action, but also if you are able to find out, to point fingers to who performed the attack, then you expect the number of the attacks to decrease, or you expect these attackers to be more careful. So actually, you might have a counter effect that the attackers are going to be more and more sophisticated, but this is something that we already expected. So what is attribution? Attribution is the process of assigning a part of the attack, of a cyber attack, to a particular entity. Attribution is in per se a difficult problem. It is mainly done by humans. So all the collection of the data, the analysis of the logs, it arrives at a certain point where the human needs to decide. He is the one that is going to read all the information, and he is the one that is going to say, okay, this looks like it is coming from here. We always have the human. By having the human there, it means that the process is error prone, because there is an enormous amount of evidence that needs to be analyzed, and the process can be biased. So how we can help the forensic analyst to deal with this enormous amount of evidence? By removing the counter effect of having the human in the loop. So digital forensic techniques help, but they are not enough. They are not enough, again, for the same problems. There is an enormous amount of data. These data can be in conflict, these data can be incomplete, and not just that, because we have the human help to have the social aspect introduced into the attribution. So how we can introduce this into a tool that can help the forensic analyst? Well, the solution is an automatic reasoner that is called ABR, that, given a set of evidence, permits the analyst to make sense of them. It might permit it to eliminate some of them. It might permit to have some new investigation path, to have some more information, or it might even just say, I don't have enough information. Maybe you should go and look for some other evidence. So ABR is based on argumentation and abductive reasoning. It permits to deal with incomplete and conflicting evidence, and it is the first tool that incorporates technical as well as social aspect of the attack. The tool is designed in a way to always have the human in the process. And to help the human, we also provide an explanation of how these conclusions were derived. We put particular attention on the explainability part of the result that were given. So as I said, we use a preference-based argumentation that is composed of a pair, TP, where T are the argument rules, where we have the rule says that if we have all the precondition that is on the right side, then L is true. And we might have preferences between rules. So we might have rules that can be applied both at the same time, but if we decide that we're going to have preference, for example, in this case, rule 1 is preferred over rule 2, then we are going to take into consideration the conclusion of rule 1 and discard what rule 2 was concluding. We decided to use preference-based argumentation because it's similar to how humans deal with information. It means that we might have, from different preconditions, we are able to arrive to some conclusion, but how we make the argument, how we are able to argue, okay, no, I have some more information, I'm in a new context, so now this rule is not applied anymore, and I'm going to this exception of the rule. This is incorporated through the argumentation reasoning. So another model that is incorporated into this ABR is a social model that is called the Q model. The Q model emulates how the forensic analysts deal with forensic evidence and how they arrive into the conclusion. What they do is that they divide the evidence as well as the rules that they make the conclusion into 3 layers. The technical aspect deal with the technical aspect of the attack. So it deals with similarity between codes, if the IP is from where it came, if the code was constructed in a particular way to avoid particular machines. The second layer is the operational one. It is more high level. It gives you information about who might have the capability for performing the attack, if there was any claim of the attack, or which might have motives for performing this attack. So here we are again in between the technical aspect of the attack and into the social aspect. And then the strategic layer is the most high-level layer that tries to understand who performed the attack. So who might be a possible culprit of this attack. So this is the schematic representation of ABR, where the user is the forensic analyst. The user provides the evidence, and the evidence are analyzed by the core, that are the technical, layer rules, operational, and strategic. And the answers are answers to the query like, give me the possible culprit, or who might have motivations, or who has done in the past similar attacks. But they can also give me some new information. For example, ABR is able to provide to the user some evidence that he can go and look for. So what are some other missing evidence that, if provided, can bring into a new investigation path? These help to avoid the bias part, but also help to share with others a lesson learned from other forensic analysts. And everything inside the core, we also have some background knowledge. The background knowledge is general knowledge that the analysts have. It might be from information about a language, about countries, geographical location, but also more technical aspect, like we have a list of the cyber capability of the countries. We have a group of hackers group, and which are their main known code and malwares. In a way to understand from the similarity of the malwares if you are able to conduct it to a particular group of hackers, or in case we have group of hackers that are working for particular countries and this country have a political motive, then we are able to say this code is similar to this other code that we have attributed to this group of hackers. But because the attack was targeted to this particular country, and we know that this country is in bad relation with this other one, then maybe this is the chain that we arrive to this other state, to this other country. So the attack wasn't made by the group, which was made by the group of hackers, but it was mandated by this particular state. So I'm going to show you very quickly how ABR works. So here I took an example of the US bank hack of 2012, where US banks faced a denial of service attack. So the information that we have in this case are that the US bank hack is the attack. The target were mainly US banks. It was able to, the analysts were able to understand that the attack was the attack was targeted to a particular country, that was US. The period was in September 2012, and again, the malware was constructed for a specific target, that was the country, US. Some other information from the social area is that, no, sorry, this is from the technical area still. The malware that was used, it was called It's Okay, No Problem Bro, and this malware was hijacking corporate clouds. And this is the social evidence that we have that is saying that in February of that year, US placed some economical sanctions against Iran. We know that the attack was against us, so let's go and find some more information about who might have some motive for performing this attack. So this is the list of the evidence that we have. Now, ABR, what it does, given this set of evidence, try to analyze them and try to derive the information by using the reasoning rules that he has. You first start with this technical rule that said that, well, if an attack is able to hijack the corporate cloud, it means that this attack is a high-level skill attack. Not everybody is able to do this kind of attack, so you need high-level skills. So by using this rule, ABR is able to derive that the US bank hack is a high-level skill attack. Another rule that is applied here is saying that if an attack is a high-level skill attack, it means that he requires high resources. So again, we are able to derive that the US bank hack requires a big amount of resources. A rule that can be applied is an operational rule that goes and checks for political motives. It is triggered because in this case we have the imposed sanctions. So it says that if a country T has imposed a sanction against this country C, then C might have some political motives for performing an attack against this country. So we are able to derive that Iran has political motives to attack US. Now, as I said, we also have some background knowledge, and the background knowledge that we have is that Iran is a cyber superpower. We have a list of countries that we consider cyber superpowers, and we have a list of countries that are divided by the tier capability. So in this case, because Iran is a cyber superpower, we can deduce that Iran has the resources for performing the attack. So this is the list of evidence that we are able to derive until now. The other rule that is applied is saying that if somebody has the resources and the attack required those resources, then this country has the capability. Now, we are just stating that he has a capability. We are not saying that he performed it. He might be in the list of the countries that has the capability. Now, when you are trying to understand who performed the attack, you want at least to have from all the world, you want to have a subset of possible that have the capability. So this is an information that is useful. So we can say that Iran has the capability for performing the attack. The other rule that is applied is the has motive. Now, this rule is particular because it's saying that if a country has political motive, so if C have political motive to perform an attack, then he might also have the motive for performing the attack. But from the moment where the attack occurred and from the moment where he had the political motive, you shouldn't have a lot of time. So this data applicability. So the political motive was in February and the attack occurred in September. We decided that this is doable. But if the political motive was in 2005, for example, and the attack occurred in 2012, this is not relevant because the political relations between countries have changed. They might not, but it's a long time. So you need this data applicability. So to understand how fresh are the information that you are using. So in this case, we are able to derive that Iran has the motive for performing the attack. And this is a list. So as you can see, the evidence are increasing and increasing. And finally, the rule that can be applied here is culprit. We say that if a country has the motive, a country in this case, but if an entity has the motive and the capability, then he might be a possible culprit. Again, possible culprit. We want to help the analyst to have a list of possible culprit. The analyst already might think it's China, but we want the analyst to have a bigger view. So this is the main idea. We want to help them to have a bigger view, to do not go to the same investigation path, the same direction. So in this case, we are able to derive that Iran is a possible culprit of this attack. So this is all the result that you have. Now, in this case, I showed you the tool, how it is working with this particular evidence. Actually, the tool is going to give you all the possible culprit that is not Iran as well. So you might have, in this case, it's Iran, because we know that it's Iran, so I wanted to show you that it was Iran. But it is also going to find out if another country, for example, Italy, had motives. I'm saying Italy just... Italy maybe had motive because in that case he wasn't in a good relation with US, so maybe Italy made it. So the idea is that the tool gives a list of possible culprit, a list of possible countries that might have motivations or a group of hackers. As the main goal is to help, not to point finger. The tool is not going to point finger, and this is something that I always try to say. The tool is there for helping and for understanding, given all this evidence that we have, what else we can derive. And then the analyst is there again. So to conclude, okay, I showed you two results, two tools, two techniques, that their main goal again was to filter the cyber forensic evidence and to help the forensic analyst to analyze and investigate cyber attacks. The first was a rewriting procedure that is able to capture the virus conflict given a set of inconsistent evidence, it provides a consistent set of evidence that then can be analyzed by the analyst. And the second solution was an automatic reasoner that, given a set of evidence, it is able to derive new evidence and to help the analyst to investigate and to attribute those attacks. I forget to mention that when we give a result with ABR, we also provide an explanation. In this case, because we are using argumentation reasoning, we have the argumentation tree of the reasoning of how we arrived to that conclusion, but we also have what else could be concluded if you had some other evidence. Is future work. So about the main future work is to be able to put this tool together. And about the filtering of evidence, because we are dealing with sources and relations of trust, it would be interesting to have a reputation and belief revision. So if I trust Alice, and Alice is always saying the truth, then I could start trusting Alice more. And Bob, if I start trusting him, but he's lying, then I'm not trusting him anymore. Again, trust reinforcement systems, it would be nice to have them integrated in this tool, and to work with the probabilities of the pieces of evidence. Until now, we state that something is stated, so we are taking it for granted, but actually those evidence might have probabilities between each other. They might have a probability of being true or not. And about ABR, we'd like to fully automate the evidence collection. Until now, the evidence are given to us. We have some extraction, for example, for the geolocation, for the logs, for the IPs, but a lot of work needs to be done, especially to incorporate it with some forensic tools. We'd like to enrich the reasoning rules of ABR, and for doing that, we'd like to use data mining techniques that permits, given the report, to extract from there the evidence and to extract from there also the reasoning rules, as well as the background knowledge. And also in this case, we'd like to work with probabilities of the rules being of the evidence being true and of the reasoning rules being true. So, thank you very much.